You know, in the 20th century, there were some truly devastating conflicts, but one of the longest, most brutal, and most expensive wars is one a lot of people just don't really talk about: the Iran-Iraq War. It was this grinding, 8-year-long struggle that completely redrew the map of the Middle East.
Yeah, that number is not a typo. Over 1 million people. It's estimated that's how many casualties there were. I mean, that makes it the deadliest conventional war between two developing nations in modern history. The human cost is just absolutely staggering.
So that's the big question, isn't it? How can a war of this sheer scale just get overlooked? Well, it often gets overshadowed by the conflicts that came right after it. So today, we're going to dig in. We're going to break down how this whole thing started, how it was fought, and this is the crucial part, why its echoes are, believe it or not, still being felt today. Okay, so let's dive into the why. You know, the roots of this war go way, way deeper than just some argument over a border. We're talking about a perfect storm of old rivalries, a brand new revolution, and a whole lot of personal ambition.
And at the very heart of this storm, you've got two incredibly powerful figures: Iraq's president, Saddam Hussein, and Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khomeini. Now, these guys weren't just neighbors who didn't get along. No. They were complete ideological opposites, and each had these huge competing visions for the entire region.
I mean, look at this. You just can't get more opposed than these two worldviews. On one hand, you have Saddam Hussein. He saw himself as the next great pan-Arab leader, you know? His goal was to unite the Arab world under a modern, secular Iraqi government. Then, on the other side, you have Khomeini. He basically saw guys like Saddam as totally illegitimate. His vision? To export his Shia Islamic revolution everywhere, and he wanted to start with Iraq, which has a big Shia population.
So, the immediate spark, the thing that really kicked it all off, was this river, the Shatt al-Arab. Now, for Iraq, this waterway is everything. It's their economic lifeblood, their main way to get oil out into the Persian Gulf. And for decades, both Iran and Iraq have been fighting over who should control it.
And this is where it gets personal. See, back in 1975, Iran was much stronger, and they basically forced Saddam to sign this thing called the Algiers Agreement. He had to give up control of half the waterway. For Saddam, who was right there at the negotiating table, this was a massive personal humiliation. And as the quote says, he was absolutely determined to get his revenge. So fast forward to 1979. The Iranian Revolution explodes onto the scene, and it's total chaos. And Saddam Hussein, he sees this as his golden opportunity. Iran's military, which used to be super powerful, was a complete mess. Their best officers had been purged. Saddam thought, this is it. They're weak, they're fractured, I can go in, get a quick win, tear up that humiliating treaty, maybe even topple Khomeini, and make Iraq the top dog in the region.
Well, that short war Saddam planned for, it didn't quite work out that way. It spiraled into a horrifying 8-year nightmare. So let's break down this really complex conflict into 3 main phases.
Okay, so first up, the Iraqi invasion in 1980. Saddam rolls in, expecting to win in a few weeks. But the Iranians put up this incredibly fierce resistance, and the whole invasion just stalls. Then, phase 2. Iran fights back. By 1982, they've somehow regrouped and launched these massive counterattacks, pushing the Iraqis all the way back out of their territory. But here's the thing, they don't stop there. Their new goal is to march on Baghdad and get rid of Saddam. And that leads us to the third and by far the longest and deadliest phase, a bloody, brutal stalemate that just dragged on for 6 more years.
Honestly, this quote pretty much says it all. The stalemate phase looked just like something out of World War I. Soldiers stuck in trenches, going over the top into machine gun fire. But now, imagine that horror show and then add modern technology to it. Ballistic missiles, fighter jets, and, yeah, terrifyingly, chemical weapons.
As the stalemate dragged on, both sides got more and more desperate, and the tactics became unbelievably brutal. You had the War of the Cities, where they were just firing missiles at each other's civilian populations. Then there was the tanker war in the Persian Gulf, attacking oil tankers to try and wreck each other's economies. And then, the most infamous part, Iraq's widespread use of chemical weapons like mustard gas to stop Iran's massive human wave attacks. Just awful stuff.
So after 8 years of this unimaginable slaughter, the war just stops. In 1988, it all grinds to a halt. Not because somebody won, but because both sides were just completely and utterly exhausted. And the result? It was just tragically, pointlessly futile.
Just take a second and look at these numbers. We're talking hundreds of thousands of soldiers dead on both sides. The economic cost? Over $1 trillion combined. And for what? What was the result of all that sacrifice? The final result was status quo ante bellum.
So what on earth does that mean? It's a Latin phrase that literally means the state of things before the war. Think about that. After 8 years of death and destruction, the borders went right back to where they were in 1980. Nothing changed. Nothing was gained. That whole dispute over the Shatt al-Arab waterway that started it all? Yeah, still unresolved.
So, here we are at the end, and you might be thinking, okay, but why does this forgotten war really matter today? Well, here's the kicker. The end of the Iran-Iraq War wasn't actually an end. It was the opening act for the next massive conflict that would pull in the entire world.
Just look at this timeline. It's a direct chain of events. In 1988, the war ends. Saddam claims victory, but his country is completely broke. He owes billions and billions of dollars to his neighbors, especially Kuwait. But he also now has the 4th largest army in the world, battle-hardened and ready to go. So what happens just 2 years later? In 1990, he invades Kuwait to erase that debt and grab their oil wealth, thinking his huge army could get away with it. And that massive miscalculation, of course, led directly to the 1991 Gulf War.
And that's really the story here. The Iran-Iraq War was a conflict with no winners, only victims. It was a brutal, pointless stalemate that absolutely shattered 2 nations. But its real legacy? It created a militarized, deeply indebted, and still very ambitious Iraq that, just 2 years later, would light the fuse on another war. And that, in turn, set the entire Middle East on a path of conflict and instability that we're still dealing with today.